Merħba, sinjuri, grazzi tal-li segwu The Malta-EU Business Gateway, the MBB podcast. Il-ġimgħa li għaddiet kellna preżentazzjoni importanti dwar il-Union of Skills mill-Kummissjoni Ewropea, parti minn dan il-podcast. Illum se nippreżentawlkom diskussjoni, dibattitu li ħloqna bħala Malta Business Bureau dwar il-Union of Skills bit-tema Skills for Growth, il-ħiliet u tkabbir tal-ekonomija u kif dawn imorru fl-imkien. Dibattitu interessanti li fih jihdu sem Ruth Debrinkat, Senior Director fin-National Skills Council, lokalment Malta, Stephen Vella, Prinċipalu Kap Eżekuttiv tal-MCAST, Ilaria Spiteri Asha mill-Misko u tirrappreżenta lil The Malta Chamber u Andy Tanti, Commercial Manager tar-Ramla Bay Resort, kif ukoll Council membru tal-Kunsil tal-Malta Hotels and Restaurants Association. Diskussjoni ferm interessanti, nistedninkom illi segwa. The Malta-EU Business Gateway, the MBB podcast, huwa miġjub lilkom minn Reaps Asset Management, sussidjarja ta' APS Bank, the Energy and Water Agency, l-Aġenzija l-Enerġija u l-Ilma, kif ukoll blajnuna ta' Finance Malta.
So first of all, thank you for the invitation to participate in this webinar. The National Skills Council obviously was part of the consultations during the development of the Union of Skills itself. And we have welcomed this framework, which builds upon the positive momentum generated during the European Year of Skills 2023-2024. Which is exactly the time when the National Skills Council was given an executive function. In fact, the National Skills Council was the national coordinator of the European Year of Skills. So, we have gone through the challenges that Malta faces. We have gone through the challenges that the EU as a whole is facing, and we must say that they are quite similar. And we do concur that the four key pillars which the Commission representative has just gone through do in fact target many of the challenges which we are facing as a country and as a continent. The National Skills Council in its work mostly focuses on Pillar 2. The pillar which Maya also delved a bit more deeper in. So we are working on, we are members of the Pact for Skills as the National Skills Council. We are also starting a feasibility study on the individual learning accounts to see their applicability in the local context. Let's keep in mind that the Commission issued a recommendation, and then it's up to the member states to identify whether or not and how to introduce such an initiative, depending on its local circumstances. But this pillar 2, so upskilling and reskilling, is very much in line with our core principle. That in promoting continuous lifelong learning. And allow me to add here that lifelong learning must be seen as a shared responsibility between a number of actors. So between yourself as an individual, taking agency in your learning journey, and sometimes we tend to overlook this part, the responsibility of employers, and the responsibility of government. So government in fostering a culture of lifelong learning. The employer in fostering also the right context and providing accessibility to learning opportunities. But then the individual himself or herself to really take on a learning journey and a growth journey to improve, whether it is for employability or for other reasons. So that is something which I wanted to point out, particularly in highlighting the pillar 2 of the Union of Skills.
Okay,
Stephen is the principal and CEO of MCAST, as I highlighted earlier. From an educational perspective, what, in your opinion, stands out the most in the Union of Skills? Do you believe it reflects the evolving role of vocational education and training in today's labor market?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invite. It's quite an interesting webinar itself. I strongly believe that, yes, it really strikes me, this Union of Skills, in how clear it repositions vocational education and training. And I've been embarking on this not as a secondary option, but as a central force in Europe's economic and social development. And it gives me great pride to see it at the end now reaching its focus. It's a bold shift, placing VET at the heart of the key priorities like digital transformation, sustainability, resilience, and even social inclusion. But what I find particularly important is the strong focus on flexibility and lifelong learning. With such tools like micro-credentials, modular programs, and the recognition of prior learning, this initiative is going to open a lot of doors. And this is not only for young students, but also for adults who are ready to reskilling and shifting even careers. This is something which is happening also in Malta and is of great importance for us to acknowledge. The introduction of the Centers of Vocational Excellence is another game changer, in my opinion. It's going to transform vocational institutions into innovation hubs that work hand in hand with industry and also research. And this will align education more closely with the real world needs. It's very modern, and it's quite a challenge for us to understand that we need to change the classroom outcomes. And this gives a broader way of seeing things in a different way. I think this also strong European dimension where we're going to be seeing skills mobility and recognition across borders. And this whole idea of interconnected European workforce is going to be a game changer in itself as well, which means institutions like MCAST need to keep raising their quality, relevance, and international collaboration, something which we have embarked on about 8 years ago. And we're quite proud today to say that MCAST presently has over 1,300 international students following their studies at MCAST. But let's not forget that the World Economic Forum has recently came up with the Future of Jobs report in 2025, and this bodes well with the Union of Skills, and it shows the importance of continuous education, continuous learning. It's a challenge, but at the same time, it's an opportunity that institutes like MCAST are ready to embrace, especially now since we are reacting to change, but only in a way that we're helping to lead it. So we will be in line with whatever the industry requires in order to make sure that we are ready for this particular change.
Thank you, Stephen. Let me bring on Ilaria here. As a training and development expert working closely with businesses, Ilaria, you're from MISCO, but you also represent the Malta Chamber. Any particular instruments that you think Maltese employers will find most promising? You can be critical. You can be critical as well. I mean, you can identify gaps if you want to.
Thank you. No, first of all, I'd like to reiterate what my colleagues have said in thanking you for setting up this webinar and for this very prestigious invitation to contribute to the discussion. I like to think that employers are open to new ways of learning and reskilling and upskilling their employees. In all fairness, when it comes to businesses, there are a lot of challenges that we need to consider. We have been in the past, we've been provided with a lot of different learning pathways. You know, we introduced LMS systems which were taken on very well. In Malta, we cannot say we have a lack of training providers because there's a lot of opportunities out there. There is also a lot of support in that there is funding that people can make use of. There's the National Skills Council, which are totally driving the identification of skills for today's workforce and the future and how we can address it. So I believe that the Union of Skill is really kind of like creating a full circle with what employers and what businesses need. For example, there was mention of Skills Pass, which has already been introduced in the past couple of years and has been embraced very well by businesses in Malta, and they are making use of it. There is also a lot of dialogue on the concept of micro-credentials and individual learning accounts as well, which is good. Dialogue raises hype. So I do believe that these instruments and initiatives will be very helpful to businesses today. We must keep in mind that the instruments alone cannot address the challenges that we are facing today. Okay, Malta Chamber of Commerce have just closed the consultation process on their breach budget document. There's a lot of information in there. I will touch on it in future questions, but I do believe that the instruments there are from the Union of Skills are helpful and can definitely work, provided that we streamline with any other structures that are being implemented, introduced, to make sure that there's full support from all areas.
Thank you, Ilaria. Ruth, how does the National Skills Council plan to engage with or complement, if I can use that word, the Union of Skills framework? I mean, in terms of skills forecasting, national skills forecasting, in terms of stakeholder coordination, how does the council plan to do that?
Sorry, because I got disconnected for a minute.
Shall I repeat the question?
Yes, please. That would be really helpful because
Okay,
I got the last bit on stakeholder consultation.
Sure. Okay. How does the council, the National Skills Council, of course, plan to engage or complement the Union of Skills framework?
So, as Maya mentioned, we would consider our involvement both in the European Skills High-Level Board, in the governance side, and even in the European Skills Intelligence Observatory. You might recall that in the slide showing the 4 pillars, Maya identified the horizontal enablers, and we see ourselves greatly contributing in the governance enabler because we were actually set up to do that. In the development of the National Skills Strategy, one of the main action areas is, in fact, skills intelligence. And what do we mean by skills intelligence? Skills intelligence is not just data, so not just numbers in itself, but making sense of data, which is both qualitative and quantitative. And there, within that realm, comes the stakeholder engagement part. So stakeholders for us are a source of very valid information, which we are holding sessions with them in a structured manner in order for us to build this skills intelligence function. Apart from that, we're working with Jobs Plus to revive the barometer, so the employment barometer, and we are also working with the Chamber of Commerce to start off a new project doing online job advertisement scanning, whereby we'll identify the present skills and jobs in demand. Subsequently, with all this information gathered in one place, so the numerical data, the input from the stakeholders, we would be able to analyze it and also start anticipating some trends using strategic foresight as a methodology. We are very proud that we are starting off this process because data is an aspect which is extremely important. Might I also praise the efforts that were done by the National Statistics Office in conducting the first National Skills Census, which was done in 2022, which provided us with a lot of very valuable information. And that was a first even at European level, because very few other member states have similar data on skills assessments.
Stephen, MCAST has a central role in vocational education, and also it has very close ties to industry, I must say. In your previous intervention, you mentioned the importance of micro-credentials. Can you give us the lowdown on how micro-credentials can support your efforts to modernize curricula, perhaps deliver more flexible targeted training?
Yes, definitely. We consider ourselves playing a key role in Malta skills ecosystem. And when it comes to micro-credentials, I think that these are incredibly powerful tools for addressing labor market needs quickly and effectively. We've already developed short targeted learning units throughout the years and helping individuals upskill and reskill in areas such as digital marketing, data analysis, cybersecurity, and sustainable construction. They're especially useful for adult learnings, especially workers in transition, because these or people working within SMEs, because they need tailored training. And importantly, they support over our broader commitment of lifelong learning, providing accessible, flexible pathways without the pressure of committing to full qualification. And that is very important, because these people working within these sectors cannot attend lectures for 1 whole year or 2 years program. All of this enables, I think, MCAST to stay agile and future-focused, adapting quickly to industry shifts while reinforcing strong partnerships with employers. At the end of the day, these tools will definitely help us prepare graduates who are not just job-ready, but resilient, competitive, and equipped for the international stage, which we have mentioned throughout also this webinar. Throughout the Union of Skills, we're not simply responding to change, but we're helping to lead and shape the future of vocational education, both here in Malta and now also across Europe.
Great. Allow me to bring in Andy Tanti from the Ramla Bay Resort and from the Malta Hotels and Restaurants Association. I know, Andy, that you've been having some problems with your connection, but now that you've joined, I want you to participate in the discussion as well. I mean, given the well-documented skills shortages in Malta's tourism and hospitality sectors, which you represent, do you believe the tools proposed in the Union of Skills, are sufficiently practical for industry uptake?
So yes, nice to be back, and thank you for the invitation. So yes, well, I see and we see there's a real potential in the new Union of Skills program. Things like micro-credentials, vet enhancements, the pact of skills, and mutual recognition could genuinely bridge the gap, bridge the skills gap we face in our hospitality industry. In theory, micro-credentials are perfect for our sector, as they are focused training programs, or can be focused training programs, on real day-to-day hotel processes that have a direct impact on the guest experience, service standards, and sustainability. But the challenge always comes with implementation on the ground. The tool sounds great on paper, no doubt about it. But unless hotels get a clear guidance, it won't be used or applied properly. And training providers need to tailor curriculum around the needs of the actual hotel operations. So it has to be an on-the-job training, on-the-job experience, and not just on paper. So yes, from my point of view, from our point of view, the tools proposed can work for our industry. but success depends on local implementation, real partnerships between employers and training providers, plus the integration of micro-credentials into daily operations. Until then, these initiatives risk being intentions without tangible on-property outcomes. Thank you.
The Malta-EU Business Gateway, the MBB podcast, huwa miġġub lilkom minn Reaps Asset Management, sussidjarja ta' APS Bank, the Energy and Water Agency, l-Aġenzija l-Enerġija u l-Ilma, kif ukoll blajnuna ta' Finance Malta.
Okay, Ilaria, in the Malta Chamber's pre-budget proposals for 2025, the Malta Chamber makes reference to the National Employment Strategy and the National Workforce Strategy, and at the same time it stresses the need to better align training with labour market needs. The Union of Skills, where does it stand? Can it complement these national ambitions from the Malta Chamber's perspective, of course? And how can your role help ensure stronger coordination between educational institutions, businesses, and government stakeholders, after all?
In my previous answer, I finished off with the note of having to streamline whatever we have, whatever we're trying to put in place, streamlining, take ideas and what policy is trying to implement from all areas. And I would like to make emphasis on this point. We can have strategies, we can have policies, we can have, all of these different things, but unless we are going to put our heads together and work towards a common goal, we can forget all of these things. I do believe that the Union of Skills have introduced the EU talent pool, which is something that I would like to highlight because this provides a fair kind of recruitment process. The pre-budget document mentions that there is a massive issue with high staff turnover in companies. And this is something where we have to create a link to HR practices as well. Nowadays, there's a trend we call job hopping, where basically people are not happy in a job. They will move on to, quickly onto another job, not necessarily the job that they would like to have, and keep on looking, until they can kind of settle. Amongst other reasons, for high staff turnover, this weekend we also saw, I don't know, if anyone's updated, the media spoke about a study about Gen Z workers who are going to interviews with a number in mind, 25,000 for a salary. And why is this so? Property is high, property is expensive. And then when we think about okay, but what contribution are you going to give to the job that is going to reward you 25k as a salary? That is where we go silent and we don't realize, and yes, there is a lack of skill, it's a very well-known fact, but what are we doing about it? How are we streamlining our processes to get there? So with all the factors in mind, that's what we need to work towards. Now, when it comes to, being an HR consultant, we need to keep in mind that training is a pillar of HR. It is a tool, an HR tool, a pillar of HR, one of the main HR pillars. And training cannot be seen regardless of HR in a business. Now, we have 99% of our business units that are SMEs, small or medium enterprises. Most of them do not have an HR function, and therefore that is lacking. So the training strategy is one that, dwindles away in a business strategy. So this is one of the faults that we already have, and I feel that when it comes to government stakeholders, this is missing, this element of having to implement a training strategy. We can think of funding, we can think of all the ways that we can access education in an easier way, a better way. We're talking validation of learning, recognition of prior learning, vet, whatnot, all the things that we're mentioning. But if there isn't enough concrete support to be able to recognize training as a business strategy, as one of the main business strategies, then that is where we're going to suffer as well. The pre-budget proposals, one of them also mentions the idea that because of high staff turnover, employers do not want to train their employees, or they do not give too much importance. And we must also understand that apart from the fact that training is an HR pillar, okay, we must identify the role of HR in this aspect, in that training on its own is not going to address a lack of skills in an individual, because a lack of skills cannot necessarily be dependent on a person's competencies. But I do believe that there are other factors that can influence a person's lack of skills. You know, we're talking about motivation at the workplace, the motivation to perform, and the drive to succeed and to engage within a company. That's just one example. I'm sure there are many others that we can look at. So when we start considering all of these things put together, how can we, combine? And the Union of Skills, yes, plays an important role with their EU talent pool, because that creates a fair recruitment process, a fair ideology of how we can get people recruited into our company that will help them to stay working for our company, that are going to make the recruitment process a lot more attractive for employees to stay within our business as employees.
Okay, Andy, in your previous intervention, you highlighted the importance of implementation at national level. Let's address the elephant in the room, the Skills Pass initiative, which has already been mentioned earlier during this webinar. It's being implemented at national level. Now that it has been in place for quite a few months, do you see any results? What can be improved?
So, yes, I mean, the Skills Pass has definitely made an impact. There's no denying that. Since its introduction, it pushed both employers and employees to take a closer look at the core competencies required to work in hospitality. It helped formalize expectations like, language skills, basic service standards, and I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. From the perspective of a hotel operator, the framework itself and how it works isn't a bad idea. It can help raise the standards and ensure that our team members, especially from third country nationals, are equipped to deliver a level of service the guests are nowadays expecting. Of course, like other things, the implementation of the Skills Pass had its own challenges. We've seen over a period of time that there have been long waiting times, sometimes even up to 3 to 4 months between the start of the process and the final outcome. And these delays in our industry, where we experience seasonal demand, staff turnover is a constant challenge. These kind of delays really affect our day-to-day operation. Of course, it puts pressure on recruitment, and in some cases, it could even lead to candidates dropping out of the process entirely. Despite this, I want to stress that the goal of the Skills Pass is definitely a good one, and we should continue building on it. So, results are mixed, but the concept is solid. If we refine the process, simplifying the logistics of the whole process itself and application, and make it more relevant to the work people are actually doing on a day-to-day basis, the Skills Pass could definitely evolve into something truly valuable for the employer and the employees and the whole industry as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Let's move on. Perhaps I would like to bring on Michele. Michele, are there any questions from the floor?
Yes, so we have one question from Mr. Martin Mercia, who asks whether there is a framework that ensures lifelong learning initiatives that are tied to actual growth and critical needs industries, not just training for its own sake. And if I may answer this from a European perspective, the answer is yes. So the Union of Skills, within the Union of Skills, lifelong learning will be strategically tied to growth industries through dedicated tools such as the EU Skills Academies, the Pact for Skills sector-specific partnerships, and also the European Skills Intelligence Observatory, which will use real-time labor market data to guide training towards high-demand sectors such as digital, green tech, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, etc. So this is something that is being considered at EU level, but perhaps for more national context, Mario, we can get some more insights from the panel. Maybe Ilaria, Stephen.
Who would like to have a go? Ruth? From the National Skills Council, the national authority.
So in taking the sectoral approach, what we are doing is we are approaching some sectors to do a sector-specific skills assessment. We started off with the maritime sector. The maritime sector is one sector out of 6 identified in the Smart Specialization Strategy, a strategy which identifies potential for innovation. The maritime sector is also one of the sectors which is identified in the Malta Vision 2050, which is a document maybe which we haven't referred to as yet in this conversation. And what we're doing is that we identify a partner within that sector, in this case, Transport Malta, who would facilitate stakeholder engagement and do a skills assessment, analyzing both the supply side, so skill supply, and the demand side, so the opportunities within that sector. And then comparing the two together, identifying gaps, and coming up with recommendations on how we can better structure the training opportunities within that sector, for the education offered to remain industry relevant. So this exercise with the maritime sector, we're doing it through a technical support instrument, so thanks to funding from the European Commission, with a number of local partners, including MCAS, for example, who have an institute providing training on maritime. And our plan is that through this EU-funded project, we'll develop a blueprint methodology, which we can then repeat with other sectors. Next in line, in fact, is the financial sector, where we have already started discussions with the Malta Financial Sector Advisory Council, with whom we shall be undertaking a similar skills assessment focused on their sector per se. So yes, critical sectors for growth are being given particular emphasis. We are working with the people from the sector, so not from a national standpoint as the National Skills Council, but getting the right people on board, and then analyzing data, understanding specific sectoral issues, and coming up with tailor-made recommendations. And this is works in progress, obviously.
If I may add on to this point, private institutions that are accredited and licensed by MFHEA are encouraged, very heavily encouraged, to continuously carry out a stakeholder analysis on their learning program, so on their course program. So if they want to create a course program, or if they want to review a course program, quality assurance heavily emphasizes the encouragement for institutions to carry out a stakeholder discussion, stakeholder analysis so we're talking students and learners, we're talking teachers and trainers, we're talking industry stakeholders, companies for future employers, things like that, to contribute into the matter of how effective a program might be, what is missing, what should be included, what is needed essentially in the workforce to make a program more not only attractive, but also useful for whoever is going to be joining as well. Notwithstanding, mentioning a very important HR tool we call a training needs analysis that you should conduct with your employees before you send them off to training. So it's not just a training exercise, but it is training that is valid.
Michele, I believe there's a second question.
Yes, thank you, Mario. So I have a question from Ms. Rosella Franco, who asks, how do you foresee Malta retaining high-performing third-country national professionals, particularly those who have already been contributing for several years in their field? Obviously, Maya touched base on some of these initiatives. Maya couldn't stay with us for this segment of the session. However, if I may just touch base on this from the European context, from the Union of Skills. The Union of Skills doesn't only look into bringing talent, but also into the retention of high-performing third country nationals. And it will do this by promoting, for example, faster recognition of foreign qualifications, improving long-term visa pathways via a new visa strategy that will be announced later on this year, and also by encouraging the integration through skills-based career progression and also providing family support. Now, obviously, this is still all conceptual. These are still ideas, but it is also looking into retaining these high-performing third country national professionals. But again, if we can get some more context from the local scene, that would be really good, Mario.
If I can add to that,
Yes, Ruth, go ahead.
I just want to refer to the Malta Labour Migration Policy. This is not a policy which the National Skills Council owns, but which we have contributed to, and therefore in that policy document, there is also outlined the importance of retaining third country national professionals who are already contributing in a productive manner to the local economy.
Stephen?
Maybe if I can add, because this is a very critical and hot topic. We've been dealing with in this respect for a number of years now, and we face a lot of issues when it comes to third country nationals, especially those who study at MCAST and then opening up a possibility of employment in Malta. And the government, yes, offers the possibility to any third country national who finishes his or her training to stay in Malta for 6 months after they finish their studies, and encourages those people to work directly to a directly linked employment, directly linked to what they've studied during their stay in Malta. However, that initiative in itself is good, but I don't believe that we are competing with our partners in Europe who are giving better benefits, which extend further to their stay in Malta by adopting a wider perspective, giving an opportunity for those people to bring also their families to stay in Malta. And that is something which we're facing, one of the biggest issues. Then secondly, we really need to understand what Malta needs, what sort of skills we're looking at. Are we looking only at researchers? Are we looking at people who graduated with a level 6, 7, or 8? Or are we also giving opportunities to the technical people, which are usually at level 3s and level 4? The shortages we're seeing are not at high level, but at lower levels. That is, graduates from level 3 and level 4. It seems that Europe and even Malta is not giving opportunity to these people as much as we would like them to have. So we really need to delve into this challenge in order to make it an opportunity, because we have a lot of people who are interested to study in Malta, especially skilled people, but we're still not opening our doors as much as we would like to do so.
Let me ask a question which is perhaps somehow related. Ruth, this is for you. Ruth de Brinkat is from the National Skills Council. In your view, what are the main barriers that Malta must overcome to fully capitalize on the Union of Skills? I mean, are there any particular policy or structural changes that you believe are necessary at national level?
Yes, and I'd like to segregate my answer into 3 sections, if you don't mind. So, first of all, the 3 classes of barriers that we see are mindset barriers, skill set barriers, and tool set barriers. And maybe this is a key takeaway that I'd like those present to reflect a bit upon following this webinar. So mindset, we need to sustain a mindset of lifelong learning. I mean, we need to start with having the skill of learning to learn we need to move away from one-time learning. And this does not only apply to low-skilled employees, because we tend to associate learning and training to those who are low-skilled. But this applies greatly to professionals. It's not because you are a warranted professional, you finished off your university days, you got your degree, you're working, and you think that you've conquered your profession itself. You need to embark on a continuous journey. And it also applies to high level and top management people. Because if you want to foster a culture of lifelong learning within your organization, CEOs need to train themselves. CEOs need to make time for training. And this, I invite you all to reflect, when was the last time that you did some form of training? And training, not necessarily formal training, so doing a micro-credential or award, but also informal and non-formal training. All shapes and forms of learning are important. Let me move on to the skill set part. We have skills shortages. We've been discussing them. We have also identified critical sectors where skills shortages are even more pronounced, but we have not touched upon transversal skills. The skills which we used to call soft skills, and believe me, I really don't like that phrase. Those skills are not soft at all. We are talking of communication and effective communication, which includes active listening as part of that skill. We are talking about leadership, about analytical thinking, and about teamwork. And may I add that in the various questionnaires and in the various surveys which the Chamber of SMEs does with its members, it has been consistently coming up that the skill gaps that they identify are mostly transversal skills. So they say, yes, when we manage to recruit someone, when there is no labor shortage, if we find a pair of hands, generally that person would have a technical background, because we would have selected the person based on the technical background. But then the transversal skill set would be a bit lacking. And possibly we need to sharpen that skill set further. And maybe here, Stephen might take the opportunity to explain a bit how apprenticeships help with the development of these transversal skill set, because we really believe in this aspect. Lastly is the tool set part. And the tool set reflects a lot all the instruments which Maya was explaining in the Union of Skills. So the individual learning accounts, which we are doing a feasibility study for, the skills pass, which we are also undertaking a study to see if, apart from the hospitality and the construction sector, are there other sectors which would benefit from a similar system? Because skill cards or skill pass link very closely with validation of skills. So I know how to do something, but I don't have the certificate for it. And therefore I can get my experience validated. And there's a whole legal component, which we are going through together with the Malta Further and Higher Authority on that aspect. And a number of other instruments there, which we started working on, and will continue working on together with the relevant stakeholders. But the tool set alone, and we tend as a country to invest a lot in the tool set, will not lead to the positive results that we need unless we focus on the skill set and on the mindset as well.
Stephen, I don't know whether you would like to add to what Ruth has just told us, but I would also like to attach another question to that. How can institutions like MCAST better align with the labor market needs highlighted by the Union of Skills particularly, I must say, in the fast-evolving sectors like digital and green technologies?
Yes, I think Ruth said a lot, especially with regards to the importance of work-based learning. We strongly believe that a student is given not just an experience, but a whole life when it comes to work-based learning. The opportunity in itself is adhered by and accepted and appreciated by both industry and us. But now when it comes to the Malta vocational education systems, I strongly believe that we need to be more agile, we need to become more collaborative and even data-driven. Unfortunately, I still believe that we are still lacking when it comes to skills intelligent tools. We need to move towards gaining the right information from CEDEFOP, from European Skills Agenda, and even our national labor market forecasts. It's not about now, it's about the future. And the whole thing about whether AI, cybersecurity, renewable energy, or circular economy is going to change our way of thinking and curve our programs, we have to make sure that we are ready and agile enough to prepare for such changes. Then when it comes to all this, I don't believe that it's only data and we can only base on data and it's all enough keeping on data. The stronger ties with industry. And this brings me obviously to work-based learning, which I've just mentioned. We don't involve them only in work-based learning, but we involve industry when we're preparing for our programs, during study boards. They're there, they're designing, they're delivering, they're part of us. And we're not two different entities, but we're one. It's the education and industry, because what goes in the workplace is what we have to prepare students for. It's the real world demand which is needed. Obviously, in order to do that, we need to be more flexible, and we have to offer flexible learning as well. We've mentioned micro-credentials. I hope that it won't become a buzzword, because micro-credentials in themselves, the fact that we're looking at modular courses where people are given the opportunity to engage themselves in building blocks in their life, because it's something which you do today, build on it, keep on doing it. And there are countries which are already focusing a lot on this, such as Finland and even Ireland. They're very successful in doing so, and I can't find a reason why not Malta can engage in the similar exercise which is being adopted in both countries. Something else which I'd like to mention is the interdisciplinary learning. I would love to start seeing courses where we have engineering, IT, business, and environmental students working together on real-life sustainability and digitization challenges. They're not different programs, but we have to build on one program for all. And this is something which I think the Union of Skills is encouraging also as we speak. The lifelong learning, the real national priority, yes, it is. But we need good support from policymakers, from employers, from institutions themselves, because we are in a rapidly changing world, and constant reskilling is not an option anymore. It has become essential. At the end of it all, I think Malta vocational institutions such as MCAS need to embrace this kind of transformation, and we have to become innovation hubs. We have to bridge education and employment and helping place Malta at the forefront of European digital and green future.
Great. Of course, we've been harping about the importance of lifelong learning for the past 2 decades, I must say. So that means that we still have a long way to go. But Ilaria, from the Malta Chamber, of course, from a business perspective, the tools that we have been mentioning this morning and that are being mentioned in the Union of Skills, no, they can be viewed as burdensome. More of the same, more red tape, more bureaucracy, distant perhaps. How can Malta ensure that the private sector engages and utilizes these tools effectively?
2 words. The first one is accessibility. Okay, we need to make sure that these tools are as accessible as possible. We have had things in the past, like for example, EU funding, which become very complicated. And if we think about the SME that doesn't have enough resources, they find it too much of a hassle to even bother trying to use them, you know. So accessibility is super, super important, making them accessible to the employer, to the employee. And as Ruth mentioned, not only for the employee, but also for the employer. Okay, so training is a top-down type of top to bottom, bottom to top, sideways, everyone should be, including the CEO, should be embarking in training. So accessibility for all and for all levels as well. The second is dialogue. And I would like to mention this a really important word, dialogue, which is basically to encourage businesses to talk about these tools, to talk about using these tools, you know, and kind of like, oh, we do this, and we found it really useful. Sharing the best practices with each other, because we can learn a thing or two from each other. Sometimes we don't like to share these things. They're like, you know, our secrets to our success. But, you know, having said that, when we come together and when we share certain dialogue and certain, you know, experiences of certain tools that we've used, like I've used this tool, it's a really good tool. I suggest you could try it, you know, it might help you overcome this difficulty, for example. Having that dialogue, you know, businesses supporting each other more. I think we need to see more of that as well out there. It is competitive, yes, but I do believe that when it comes to, you know, tools that are being implemented from an EU level, there shouldn't be any secrets there. You know, they're there for everyone. They're there to be used by everyone. So sharing those experiences with each other, I think, will definitely help in avoiding, you know, the distant factor or seeing them as a burden.
The views from the other side of industry, Andy, from the council member from the Malta Hotels and Restaurants Association. Tourism and hospitality often require high volumes of skilled staff with practical and customer-facing competencies. What steps do you believe Malta should take nationally, of course, to ensure these sectors are not left behind as the Union of Skills is progressively rolled out?
Thank you. So tourism, in essence, is a service sector. So its success, the success of the industry, depends heavily on skilled, service-oriented workforce. In the end, it's a people's industry. So a skills gap can quickly become a service gap. So as the EU rolls out its Union of Skills, we must ensure that the hospitality industry isn't just included, but must be prioritized. The Union of Skills offers a solid framework through the micro-credentials, vocational training pathways, and then the industry-led partnerships. But it can become meaningful at national level. We need sector-specific actions that meet the unique demands of tourism and hospitality in Malta and Gozo. Skilled labor development needs to start earlier and be better aligned to real-world hotel operations. We should fast-track apprenticeships, co-designed by hotels and vocational education providers, to ensure they are practical, hands-on, and directly to employment. A trainee porter, for example, or a receptionist or a food and beverage server completing their placement should walk away with a job offer and not just a certificate. So the pace at which our industry is changing is staggering. Every day we see different things coming along and a lot of changes coming to the forefront. Whether it's managing the guest expectations, digital innovation, or sustainability practices, training must evolve to adapt to ensure it remains relevant, future-focused, and aligned with the operational realities of our industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. We're coming to a close of this webinar, basically. I mean, we're running out of time. We're already like 20 minutes, well, no, 15 minutes beyond the time that we allocated. But it's been a really interesting discussion. I just wanted to conclude by asking a question to each and every member of the panel. And I would like you to be as brief as possible. I'm giving you like 30 seconds to reply to this question. Ruth, I'll start off with you. If you could mention one complementary national measure to strengthen Malta's readiness for the Union of Skills, what would that be?
I will second Ilaria on this one, and it would have to be structured, sustained dialogue with all stakeholders, not only education and industry, but also education, industry, and policymakers, as well as education, community, parents, and society as a whole. We are working on this, so look out for the initiatives that we're rolling out.
Stephen, from your end, how do you see MCAS's curriculum evolving over the next 5 years in response to the national needs and initiatives like the Union of Skills?
Well, if I had to answer in 30 seconds, that would be a great difficulty for me, because 5 years in themselves are quite long. But I'm seeing MCAS, moving and evolving into an exciting period. We definitely need to be aligned with Malta national goals, and EU strategies. But we need to focus more, I believe, on AI, digital tech, green energy, and healthcare. In order to, change a little bit what Ruth dislikes, that's the soft skills. I think we need to focus a lot on critically needed skills. And these are more on creativity, communications, critical thinking, teamwork. And as I mentioned before, we need to encourage interdisciplinary projects and entrepreneurial thinking, which will definitely or are actually crucial in today's jobs market. After all, we've been engaged in several initiatives like the EU for Dual Alliance, where we're looking at possibility of dual programs to offer international standards and promote even students' mobility. So we are going to continue to grow as an institution in order to make sure that Malta's economy and social transformation is at heart, as we strongly believe, for each and every student.
Ilaria, from your end, can you sense a growing appetite among Maltese employers to invest more actively in lifelong learning and upskilling?
So from a personal level, which obviously feeds into my contribution to all of this discussion, I'm a doctoral candidate with MCAS. I'm closing off my doctorate, and one of my latest interviews provided super insight into this, and pretty much it's pretty much twofold. First of all, we need to accept, we need to kind of like develop an attitude to learning, a culture of learning. Meaning that our learning doesn't just stop with a degree or a master's, but learning is constantly ongoing. The second part of the story is that, we've heard a lot of this complaining, and that school education does not prepare us for work today and whatnot. And I don't think that argument is completely fair, because it cannot prepare you for what you're going to encounter in the workforce in 15, 20 years' time. So this is why we need to have a love for learning. We need to develop this. And this is the cultural change and shift that we need to see. We have yet to see it. We're getting there. As you mentioned, Mario, we've been mentioning lifelong learning for the last 2 decades. It's finally being drilled into some people's minds, but still not fully there yet. And I believe that the shift is still happening, in that we need to continue accepting that, we need to develop this love for continuous type of learning. It doesn't stop at school. It doesn't stop, but it has to continue.
Andy, what would success look like for the hospitality industry if Malta fully embraces the Union of Skills?
So if we fully embrace the union skills, I think we'll look back in a few years and see a real shift. Not just how we train our employees, but the quality of the service we're able to offer across the industry. And ultimately, it's what matters most to our guests. So if we get this right, success won't be just defined in how many people we're able to hire, but in how well we train, retain, and empower our employees, and by the quality of the experience we offer to our guests, all guests who walk through our hotel doors. Thank you.
Okay, time is up. I would really like to thank you all for joining us and for sharing your views. Two things before we leave. I would like to thank the permanent representation of the European Union in Malta for collaborating in the organization of the event. And special thanks, of course, to Ms. Maya Ivanova from DG Employment and to all of the panelists for your contribution. Ruth De Brincat, Stephen Vella, Ilaria Spiteriasha, and Dendi Tanti, and also all of you for joining and for the intelligent questions that you asked.
Tintem hemmhekk dik id-diskussjoni u naslu fit-tmiem ukoll ta' dan il-podcast, però kif tinnutaw ħarġu diversi elementi importanti minn dik id-diskussjoni dwar l-Skills for Growth u l-Union of Skills tal-Unjoni Ewropea. Pratikament punt kardinali li joħroġ li jilna tant snin nitkellmu dwar ħtieġa tat-tagħlim tul il-ħajja, il-lifelong learning, ħafna nies għamlu din il-kultura parti minn ħajjithom, però issa trid issir mhux biss parti minn ħajjitna fuq livell individwali iżda għandha tkun xi ħaġa li nadottaw bħala soċjetà. U kemm jirnexxielna nagħmluha din fl-aħħar mill-aħħar tkun ta' benefiċċju għall-ekonomija b'mod ġenerali, mhux biss lokalment fuq livell nazzjonali f'Malta, iżda wkoll b'mod ġenerali fl-Unjoni Ewropea. Grazzi tal-li segwejtu t-tieni episodju ta' The Malta-EU Business Gateway, the MBB podcast, nkunu magħkom fil-ġimgħat li ġejjin. The Malta-EU Business Gateway, the MBB podcast, huwa miġġub lilkom minn Reaps Asset Management, sussidjarja ta' APS Bank, the Energy and Water Agency, l-Aġenzija l-Enerġija u l-Ilma, kif ukoll bl-għajnuna ta' Finance Malta. Malta-EU Business Gateway, the MBB podcast, huwa produzzjoni ta' The Malta Business Bureau, kontenut Mario Xpiereb, assistenza teknika Ralf Grima. The Malta Business Bureau hija l-fera ta' konsulenza ta' The Malta Chamber of Commerce u l-Malta Hotels and Restaurants Association.